I didn't raise my voice when I found out. That's the part people never believe. They expect yelling, doors slamming, a glass shattering against the wall like in those overdramatic movies. But I just stood there in the kitchen, staring at the soft glow of my wife's phone lighting up the marble counter, and I listened. Laughed. She laughed. Not the polite kind, not the that's funny kind. It was soft, warm, intimate. The kind of laugh I hadn't heard from her in years. The kind she used to save for me. And that's when I knew. Not suspected, not feared. Knew. I didn't touch the phone right away. I didn't need to. My chest had already tightened in that quiet, suffocating way that only comes when something inside you breaks without making a sound. Instead, I leaned back against the counter, arms crossed, just watching the screen light up again. Another message. Her face lit up too. And then I heard footsteps. Dad. I turned. Emily stood in the doorway, her backpack slung over one shoulder, her hair still slightly damp from practice. 16 years old. My little girl. The one I used to carry on my shoulders around the house while she giggled and pulled at my ears. Hey, I said, forcing a smile that felt like it didn't belong to me anymore. You're home early. She nodded, but her eyes flicked, just for a second, toward the phone. And something about that glance lingered. Where's your mom? I asked casually. She's upstairs, Emily said, too quickly, too smooth, like she'd rehearsed it. That was the first crack. Not the affair. Not the messages. That. Because kids, especially your kids, you know when something's off. You feel it before you understand it. And right then, standing in my own kitchen, looking at my own daughter, I felt like a stranger in my own home. Everything okay? I asked. Emily hesitated, just for a second. Then she smiled. Yeah, why wouldn't it be? Why wouldn't it be? I almost laughed. Instead, I nodded slowly and grabbed my keys. I've got to run a quick errand, I said. I'll be back. She didn't ask where I was going. She didn't say be careful. She didn't even look at me again. She just walked past me and picked up her mother's phone. That was the second crack. And this one didn't just crack something inside me, it split it wide open. I didn't say anything, didn't react. I just walked out the front door, got in my car, and sat there for a long time, hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. Because in that moment, it wasn't just about my wife anymore. It was about both of them. And somehow, that hurt worse. Her name is Lisa. We've been married for 19 years. 19. You don't just throw that away. Not over a rough patch. Not over boredom. Not over midlife confusion or whatever excuse people like to dress betrayal up in. You work through it. At least, that's what I believed. We built everything together. The house, the life, the routines. Sunday breakfasts, Friday movie nights, vacations where nothing went according to plan but somehow became the best memories anyway. I thought we were solid. Maybe not perfect, but real. Turns out, I was the only one still living in that version of reality. I didn't confront her that night. Or the next. Instead, I started watching. Listening. Paying attention to all the little things I'd ignored before. Like how she'd suddenly started taking her phone everywhere, even to the bathroom. How she'd smile at texts and then quickly lock the screen if I walked by. How she'd started caring a little too much about what she wore, even on random weekdays. Classic signs. I know I've read the stories, heard the warnings. You just never think they'll apply to you. Until they do. But what I wasn't prepared for was Emily. At first, I told myself I was imagining it, that she was just being a teenager, distant, distracted, wrapped up in her own world. But then I noticed the whispers. The shared glances. The way conversations would stop the second I entered the room. And one night I heard it. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I just came home earlier than usual. Their voices carried from the living room, low, urgent. I'm just saying, Mom, Emily whispered, you deserve to be happy. My chest tightened. A pause. Then Lisa's voice, softer, hesitant. I know, but your dad. Dad doesn't even notice, Emily cut in. He's always working, always tired. When was the last time he actually made you feel anything? Each word hit like a punch I didn't see coming. I mean, you've already come this far, Emily continued. Why stop now? Silence. Heavy, suffocating. Then Lisa exhaled and said the words that changed everything. I think I love him. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Didn't even feel the ground beneath me anymore. Because it wasn't just the betrayal. It wasn't even the affair. It was the fact that my daughter, the one I'd raised, protected, loved more than anything in this world, was sitting there encouraging it. Backing it. Choosing her side. Over me. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment, every memory, every what if that suddenly felt meaningless. What if I'd worked less? What if I'd paid more attention? What if I'd noticed sooner? But deep down I knew. This wasn't about what I did or didn't do. This was about choices. Her choices. Their choices. And for the first time in my life, I realized something that felt both devastating and strangely freeing. I didn't have to stay. The next morning, I made coffee like I always did. Set out 3 cups. Routine. Normal. Safe. Lisa came down first, her hair tied back, wearing that same soft smile she'd perfected over the years, the one that used to make me feel like everything was okay. Morning, she said. Morning, I replied. Emily followed a few minutes later, scrolling through her phone, barely glancing up. Morning, Dad. Morning. Silence settled over the table. Thick. Awkward. But neither of them seemed to notice. Or maybe they just didn't care. I took a sip of my coffee, then set the mug down carefully. I'm taking the day off, I said. Lisa looked up surprised. Oh, everything okay? I met her eyes. For a moment, just a moment, I wondered if she'd see it, if she'd recognize the shift, the distance, the quiet storm building behind my calm expression. But she didn't. She just smiled again. Yeah, I said evenly, everything's fine. And that's when I decided. No yelling. No confrontation. No begging for explanations or apologies that wouldn't mean anything anyway. Just action. Quiet. Final. I stood up, grabbed my keys, and walked out. Because sometimes the loudest thing you can do is leave without saying a word. I didn't go to work that day. Instead, I drove aimlessly at first, letting muscle memory take over while my mind replayed everything on a loop. The same words, the same laugh, the same quiet betrayal echoing louder with every mile. I think I love him. Emily's voice layered right over it. You deserve to be happy. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. Funny how those words used to mean something good. Now they just sounded like permission. Permission to lie. Permission to destroy. Permission to erase 19 years like it was nothing more than a rough draft. I pulled into a parking lot I didn't recognize and just sat there, engine idling, staring at nothing. My reflection in the rearview mirror looked off, like someone had taken my life and shifted it half an inch to the side. Still familiar. But wrong. That's when I reached for my phone. Not to call her. Not to text. But to search. Divorce attorney near me. My thumb hovered for a second. 19 years. A house. A daughter. A life. And all it took was one tap. I exhaled slowly. Then I tapped. Her office was on the 3rd floor of a quiet building downtown. Clean, minimal, the kind of place where everything felt intentional, like nothing existed there by accident. I almost turned around before going in. Almost. But then I remembered Lisa's laugh. And Emily's voice. And suddenly, walking away didn't feel like losing anymore. It felt like the only thing I had left. Mr. Carter, the receptionist asked with a polite smile. I nodded. She'll see you now. The lawyer, Amanda, was calm in a way that made it easier to breathe. Mid-40s, sharp eyes, no nonsense. She didn't waste time. Tell me what's going on. So I did. Not everything. not the full emotional collapse happening underneath my ribs. Just the facts. Married 19 years. One daughter. Suspected affair, no, not suspected, confirmed. I kept my voice steady, measured, controlled. Like if I stayed calm, I could keep the situation from spiraling any further than it already had. Amanda listened without interrupting, occasionally jotting something down. When I finished, she leaned back slightly. "Do you have proof?" she asked. I paused. "No," I admitted, "not yet." "Then we start there," she said simply. "Documentation matters, especially if this gets contested." Contested? The word sat heavy in my chest. Because that meant fighting. And I wasn't sure I had anything left in me to fight for. Except maybe my dignity. "I don't want a war," I said. Amanda gave me a small, knowing look. "Most people say that at the beginning." "I mean it," I replied. "I'm not here to ruin her, I just want out." She studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Then we move carefully," she said. "Quietly, you gather what you can. Financials, communications if possible, don't confront her yet." I almost smiled at that. Too late. But I didn't say it. Instead, I asked the only question that mattered now. "How long does this take?" Amanda folded her hands. "That depends on how cooperative she is." I let out a short, humorless breath. "Yeah," I muttered, "that's what I was afraid of." The next few days felt like living in two realities at once. On the outside, everything looked normal. I went to work, came home, sat at the dinner table, nodded at conversations I barely heard. But inside, something had already ended. I started noticing things I'd never paid attention to before. Like how Lisa angled her phone away from me every time it buzzed. How she'd leave the room to take certain calls. How her voice changed, softer, lighter, when she thought I couldn't hear. And Emily stopped pretending. She didn't avoid me exactly. But there was a shift. A coldness. Like she'd already made her decision, and I just hadn't caught up yet. One night, I walked into the living room and found her laughing at something on her phone. "Who's that?" I asked casually. She looked up, almost startled, then quickly locked the screen. "Just a friend." A lie. A small one. But it landed heavier than anything else. Because she didn't even try to make it believable. "Right," I said quietly. And for a second, just a second, something flickered in her expression. Guilt? Maybe. Or maybe I just wanted to see it. A week later, I got my proof. I wasn't proud of how. But at that point, pride felt like a luxury I couldn't afford. Lisa had left her laptop open. Just for a minute. She stepped outside to take a call, another one of those soft-voiced, closed-door conversations. I stared at the screen. My reflection stared back. And then, I stepped forward. I didn't dig through everything. Didn't read every message. I didn't need to. The first thread I opened told me everything. Photos. Plans. Jokes. Intimate, casual, comfortable. Like they'd been building something real, while I was still living in the ruins of what we used to be. And then I saw it. A message from him. Does he suspect anything? My chest tightened. Lisa's reply came seconds later. No, he's clueless. I froze. Clueless. 19 years. And that's what I was reduced to. Not a partner. Not a husband. Just an obstacle she hadn't bothered to move yet. I closed the laptop gently. Carefully. Like if I made too much noise, the illusion might shatter, and I'd have to face them right then and there. But I didn't. Because now, I had what I needed. Amanda didn't react when I showed her. Not emotionally, at least. Professionally, though. I saw the shift. This helps, she said, reviewing the screenshots. A lot. Good, I replied. Because that's all it was now. Evidence. Leverage. Steps in a process. Are you ready to file? She asked. I didn't hesitate. Yes. And just like that. It was real. The papers came 2 days later. Neatly organized. Cold. Final. I sat in my car outside the house for a long time, staring at them. This was it. The point of no return. Once I walked inside, everything would change. Or maybe it already had. I grabbed the envelope and stepped out. Inside, the house was quiet. Too quiet. Lisa stood in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone, that same faint smile playing on her lips. Emily sat on the couch, headphones in, lost in her own world. For a moment, I just stood there, looking at them, memorizing it. The last snapshot of a life that no longer belonged to me. "Hey," Lisa said without looking up, "you're home early." I didn't answer right away. Instead, I walked over to the counter, placed the envelope down, and slid it toward her. That got her attention. "What's this?" she asked, frowning slightly. "Open it." She hesitated, then did. And as her eyes moved across the first page, I saw it. The shift. Confusion. Realization. And then, fear. "Are you serious?" she whispered. Emily pulled off her headphones. "What's going on?" Lisa looked up at me, her voice suddenly sharp. "You filed for divorce." I met her gaze. "Calm. Steady." "Yeah," I said. And for the first time since all of this started, I felt something close to control. Not anger. Not sadness. Just clarity. "You didn't even talk to me," she snapped. I tilted my head slightly. "About what?" I asked quietly. And the silence that followed. That was louder than any argument we could have had. Lisa stared at me like she was waiting for the punchline. Like this was some kind of cruel joke I'd taken too far. "You're just going to, what, end it?" she said, her voice rising, disbelief turning sharp. 19 years and you don't even have a conversation with me first." I leaned back against the counter, arms folded, watching her carefully. "We've been having that conversation," I said evenly. "You just weren't having it with me." Her expression faltered. Just for a second. Then she recovered, shaking her head like she could physically throw the accusation off. "I don't know what you think you saw or—" "Stop," I cut in, not raising my voice, but letting the word land with enough weight to freeze the room. Emily went still on the couch. Lisa blinked at me. And I stepped forward just enough to close the distance between us. Not aggressively, not threatening, just enough to make sure she couldn't pretend this was something vague or misunderstood. "I know," I said quietly. 2 words. Simple. Final. And they hit harder than anything louder ever could. Lisa's lips parted, but no sound came out. "You left your laptop open," I continued. "You might want to be more careful next time." That did it. Color drained from her face, her fingers tightening around the edge of the counter. Emily looked between us, her expression shifting from confusion to something else, something guarded. "Mom," she said, softer now, "what is he talking about?" Lisa didn't answer her. She just kept staring at me, like she was trying to calculate how much damage had already been done. "How long?" I asked. Not angry. Not yelling. Just asking. Because somehow that mattered. She swallowed. "A few months," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "A few months." I nodded slowly, like I was processing a piece of information that didn't quite register as real. "A few months," I repeated. Emily stood up. "What?" she said, her voice rising now. "You said it wasn't serious." Lisa turned to her quickly. "Emily." "No," Emily snapped, stepping back. "You told me it was just something casual, that you were figuring things out." And there it was. The truth unraveling in real time. Not just for me. For both of them. Lisa looked between us, her composure cracking for the first time. "I didn't want to drag you into this," she said to Emily. Emily let out a bitter laugh. "You already did." Silence. Thick. Uncomfortable. And then, finally, Lisa looked back at me. "You were never supposed to find out like this," she said. I almost smiled. "Yeah," I said, "that seems to be a theme." Her jaw tightened. "Don't do that." "Do what?" Act like you're above this, like you're perfect, she snapped. You think this just happened out of nowhere? You think I woke up one day and decided to throw everything away? I didn't interrupt. I let her talk. Because now I wanted to hear it. All those nights you stayed late at work, she continued, her voice gaining momentum. All those weekends you were too tired or too busy, you checked out long before I did. There it was. The justification. The explanation that somehow made betrayal feel reasonable. I was building a life for us, I said calmly. And I was living in it alone, she fired back. The words hung in the air. Heavy. Loaded. And for a moment, I let myself feel them. Not as an excuse, but as context. Because maybe, somewhere along the way, we had both drifted. Maybe I had missed things. Maybe I had gotten comfortable. But none of that. None of it. Explain this. You had choices, I said quietly. You could have talked to me. You could have left. You could have done 100 different things that didn't involve lying to my face every day. Lisa looked away. Because she didn't have an answer for that. There isn't one. Dad, Emily's voice cut in softer now, uncertain. I turned to her. And for the first time since all of this started, I really looked at her. Not as the little girl I used to carry. Not as the teenager who rolled her eyes at everything I said. But as someone who had made a choice. You knew, I said. Not a question. A statement. She hesitated. Then nodded. Slowly. I didn't think it was like this, she said quickly. I thought you and Mom were already basically over. I let that sink in. Did you ever ask me that? I asked. She looked down. No. Did you ever come to me and say, hey, something feels off. Are you okay? Silence. I was trying to help her, she said defensively. She was miserable. And I was, I asked. That hit. I saw it. The way her shoulders dropped just slightly. The way her expression shifted. Because for the first time, she realized something she hadn't considered before. I didn't know, she said, quieter now. Exactly, I replied. Lisa slammed her hand lightly against the counter, frustration spilling over. So that's it, she said. You're just going to walk away. No counseling, no trying to fix anything, just done. I looked at her. Really looked at her. At the woman I had spent nearly 2 decades building a life with. At the person who used to be my partner, my safe place, my home. And I realized something that settled deep in my chest. There was nothing left to fix. You already left, I said. Her eyes flashed. That's not fair. It doesn't have to be fair, I replied. It just has to be over. That landed. Hard. The days that followed were quiet. Unnaturally quiet. Lisa tried to talk a few times. Half-hearted attempts at figuring things out. Conversations that started with, maybe we moved too fast, or we should at least consider. I didn't engage. Not out of spite. Not to punish her. But because every word felt unnecessary now. The decision had already been made. And dragging it out wouldn't change that. Emily kept her distance. Not cold, not completely. But different. Like she didn't know where to stand anymore. And maybe she didn't. A week later, Lisa finally broke. It was late. The house was dark. I was sitting in the living room, going through paperwork when she walked in. No phone. No distractions. Just her. Can we talk? She asked. I sighed quietly, setting the papers down. Okay. She sat across from me, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. I ended it, she said. I didn't react. Not because I didn't hear her. But because it didn't matter. He didn't mean anything, she added quickly. It was a mistake, a stupid, selfish mistake. I nodded slowly. Okay. Her eyes searched mine, desperate for something, anger, relief, anything. Okay, she repeated, that's all you have to say. What do you want me to say? I asked calmly. I want you to fight for us, she said, her voice breaking. I want you to care. I held her gaze. I did, I said quietly, for 19 years. And that That was the moment she realized. This wasn't a phase. This wasn't a reaction. This was the end. "I don't recognize you," she whispered. I almost smiled at that. Because the truth was, I didn't recognize myself either. Not anymore. The version of me that would have begged, argued, tried to fix something that had already been broken beyond repair. He was gone, left somewhere between her laugh in the kitchen and my daughter choosing her side. And what was left was someone who finally understood something simple. Sometimes, walking away isn't weakness. It's the only power you have left. The house didn't feel like mine anymore. It's strange how quickly that happens. Same walls, same furniture, same faint creak in the hallway floor I used to step over late at night so I wouldn't wake anyone. But something invisible had shifted, like the soul of the place had packed its bags before I ever did. I started noticing what didn't belong to me anymore. The silence at dinner. The way Lisa avoided sitting too close. The way Emily hovered somewhere in between, guilt on one side, stubbornness on the other. We were still under the same roof. But we weren't a family anymore. We were 3 people waiting for the inevitable. The paperwork moved faster than I expected. Amanda had warned me that once things started, they had a rhythm, a process, deadlines, responses, disclosures. It felt clinical, like dismantling a life through forms and signatures. Assets, accounts, property, words that reduced 19 years into categories and checkboxes. Lisa didn't fight it at first. That surprised me. Part of me had expected resistance, anger, a drawn-out battle fueled by denial or desperation. But instead, she signed. Quietly, like she was still trying to process how it had all slipped through her fingers. Or maybe she thought I'd change my mind. Emily didn't speak to me for 3 days straight. Not a word. Not even a glance. And I let her have that. Because I understood something she didn't yet. She wasn't just angry at me. She was angry at the situation, at her mother, at herself. But I was the easiest place to put it. The safest target. The one person she assumed wouldn't walk away from her, no matter what. That assumption sat heavy in my chest. Because for the first time, I wasn't so sure. It happened on a Thursday night. Rain tapping softly against the windows, the kind that makes everything feel quieter than it already is. I was in the kitchen, packing a few things into a box, nothing major, just essentials, clothes, documents, the beginning of something that made this whole thing real in a way paperwork never could. "You're leaving." Her voice. "Emily." I turned slowly. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, trying to look stronger than she felt. "I told your mom I'd stay until things were sorted," I said. "That's not what I asked," she replied. I studied her for a moment. "You already know the answer." Her jaw tightened. "So you're just going to go," she said, "like it's nothing." There was anger there. But underneath it, fear. And that was harder to face than anything else. "It's not nothing," I said quietly. "That's exactly why I'm going." She let out a sharp breath, shaking her head. "You're giving up," she said. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because of how completely she misunderstood. "No," I said, "I'm accepting reality." "Reality," she snapped, "you didn't even try." That hit something. Not enough to break me, but enough to make me step closer. "I tried for years," I said, my voice still calm but firmer now. "You just didn't see it." She opened her mouth to argue, then stopped. Because part of her knew I wasn't wrong. "You don't just leave your family," she said, softer now. And there it was. The line she'd been holding onto. The belief that no matter what happened, I'd stay. That I'd absorb it. Endure it. Be the constant. I nodded slowly. "You don't betray your family either," I replied. Silence. Her eyes dropped. And for the first time since all of this started, I saw her crack. "I didn't think," she began, her voice faltering. "I didn't think it would go this far." "That's the problem," I said gently. "You didn't think about me at all." Tears welled up in her eyes, but she blinked them back quickly. Defensive again. I was trying to protect Mom, she said. From what? I asked. She hesitated, then looked at me. From being unhappy. I took a breath. Long. Steady. And who was protecting me? I asked. That question didn't just hang in the air. It sank. Deep. Because there wasn't an answer. I messed up, she said finally. 3 words. Simple. But they carried more weight than anything she'd said before. I nodded. Yeah, I said, you did. She flinched slightly at how direct it was. But I didn't soften it. Not this time. Because some truths need to land exactly as they are. Do you hate me? She asked. The question caught me off guard. Not because I hadn't thought about it, but because hearing it out loud made it real in a different way. I looked at her. Really looked at her. At the girl who used to run into my arms after school. At the teenager who had made a choice that broke something between us. And I answered honestly. No, I said. Her shoulders dropped slightly, relief flickering across her face. But I'm disappointed, I added. And that hit harder. I saw it in the way her eyes filled instantly. The way her composure finally gave out. I didn't mean to hurt you, she whispered. I know, I said. And I did. That didn't make it hurt any less. Lisa watched most of that conversation from the hallway. I hadn't noticed her at first. But when I turned, she was there. Quiet. Still. Taking it all in. This is my fault, she said, her voice low. I didn't respond. Because assigning blame at this point felt pointless. It didn't change anything. Didn't undo anything. I dragged her into this, Lisa continued. I made her feel like she had to choose. Emily wiped her face quickly, turning away. I chose on my own, she muttered. Lisa shook her head. No, you chose based on what I showed you. That landed. For both of them. And for a moment, the weight of it all sat there. Unspoken. Heavy. Real. I don't want you to go, Lisa said suddenly, looking at me. There it was again. Not love. Not even regret in the way it should have been. Just fear of losing what was familiar. I know, I said. Then don't, she replied almost desperately. We can fix this. We can try. No, I said. Gently. But firmly. And this time, there was no room left for negotiation. Her face fell. Because she finally understood. Not just that I was leaving. But that she couldn't stop me. The next morning, I finished packing. Not everything. Just enough. The rest would be sorted later. Through lawyers. Through time. Through distance. Emily didn't come downstairs. Lisa stood by the door as I carried the last box out. This isn't how I thought our story would end, she said. I paused. Looked at her. And for a second, memories tried to creep in. The good ones. The ones that almost make you forget everything else. But I didn't let them take over. Me neither, I said. Then I opened the door. Stepped outside. And didn't look back. Because sometimes, closure doesn't come from long conversations. Or emotional goodbyes. Sometimes, it comes from the quiet decision to finally choose yourself. Even when it costs you everything you used to call home. The apartment was smaller than I expected. Not bad, just quiet. Too quiet. No footsteps upstairs. No muted conversations behind half-closed doors. No background noise of a life shared with other people. Just me. And for the first few nights, that silence felt heavier than anything I'd left behind. I'd wake up out of habit, reaching for a space that wasn't there anymore. My mind still catching up to the reality my actions had already accepted. It wasn't regret. Not exactly. It was withdrawal. From routine. From familiarity. From a version of life that had ended long before I walked out the door. The divorce moved forward without drama. No screaming matches. No courtroom battles. Just signatures. Deadlines. Finality. Lisa didn't contest anything significant. No drawn-out fights over assets, no attempts to twist the narrative in her favor. If anything, she seemed tired. Like she'd finally run out of ways to hold everything together. Or maybe she realized there was nothing left to hold. Either way, within a few months. It was done. 19 years. Reduced to a stamped document and a quiet "you're free to go." Emily didn't call. Not at first. Weeks passed. Then a month. I didn't reach out either. Not because I didn't care, but because I understood something now that I hadn't before. Space isn't punishment. Sometimes it's the only way people face what they've done. And Emily needed that. Maybe more than Lisa did. The first call came on a Sunday. Late afternoon. I was sitting by the window, a cup of coffee in my hand, watching the city move without me. Her name lit up my phone. For a second, I just stared at it. Then I answered. "Hey." Silence. Soft breathing on the other end. "Hi, Dad." Her voice was smaller than I remembered. Not physically. Emotionally. "Hey," I repeated, setting the cup down. Another pause. Then, "I didn't know how to call you. Honest. Ruh." I respected that. "You just did," I said. A faint, shaky exhale came through the line. "I've been thinking about everything," she continued. Like, really thinking, not just reacting. I leaned back in my chair, listening. "I was wrong," she said. There was no defensiveness this time. No excuses. Just truth. "I thought I understood what was happening," she went on. "I thought I was helping Mom, but I wasn't seeing the whole picture." No. She hadn't. But now she was starting to. "I hurt you," she said quietly. "Yes," I replied. I didn't soften it. Didn't rush to reassure her. Because this part mattered. Accountability isn't real if you rush past the damage. "I know," she whispered. We sat in that silence for a moment. Not uncomfortable. Just honest. "I miss you," she added. And there it was. Not guilt. Not obligation. Just missing me. I closed my eyes briefly. Because that still meant something. "I miss you too," I said. We didn't fix everything in that one call. That's not how real things work. But we started. Slowly. Carefully. With boundaries. With honesty. With an understanding that trust isn't rebuilt through words. It's rebuilt through time. Lisa reached out a week later. A text. Simple. "I'm glad she called you." I stared at it for a while. Then replied. "Me too." That was it. No reopening old wounds. No revisiting the past. Because whatever we had, whatever we lost, it didn't need more conversation. It needed distance. And acceptance. Months passed. Life settled into something new. Not better. Not worse. Just different. I learned how to exist on my own again. Built routines that didn't revolve around anyone else. Found quiet in ways that didn't feel empty anymore. And somewhere along the way, I stopped replaying the past. Stopped asking why. Stopped needing answers that wouldn't change anything anyway. One evening, Emily came to visit. First time since everything. She stood at the door for a second, like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to be there. "You gonna come in?" I asked. She smiled, small, nervous, and stepped inside. We kept it simple. Ordered food. Talked about school. Life. Normal things. But underneath it all, there was something deeper. Something rebuilding. Not the same as before. But real. As she was leaving, she paused at the door. "I'm proud of you," she said suddenly. I frowned slightly. For what? "For not staying," she replied. That caught me off guard. She shrugged a little, searching for the words. "I used to think staying meant you were strong," she said. Like, no matter what happened, you just held everything together. I nodded slowly. "I get it," I said. But now, she continued, her voice steadier, I think leaving takes more strength, especially when you still care. I held her gaze. Because she wasn't just talking about me. She was talking about everything she'd learned, the hard way. Yeah, I said quietly, sometimes it does. She gave me a small smile. Then stepped forward and hugged me. Tight. Real. And for the first time in a long time. It didn't feel like something was missing. After she left, I stood there for a while. In the doorway. Looking out at a life that had changed in ways I never planned. And I thought about everything that had happened. The betrayal. The silence. The moment I chose to walk away instead of fight for something that was already gone. And I realized something simple. Walking away didn't ruin my life. It revealed it. Because staying would have cost me myself. And leaving, it gave me something I didn't even realize I'd lost. Peace. So yeah, she grinned while her daughter backed her affair. And I didn't yell, didn't beg, didn't break down in front of them. I just filed for divorce, walked away. And in doing that, I finally stopped abandoning myself.